All right, let's do loops. So there are two kinds of basic loops. So we have for loops and we have while loops. All right, so let's do for loops first. So a for loop is used when you want it to computer to do a certain thing a certain number of times. So the idea is that we want the computer to, I don't know, print something to the screen 3 times, or you want the computer to go through the number all the students we have in our database, and there's 10 of them, right? So the for loop is for a set number of times you want to do something, right? That's what differentiates it from a while loop. For loops, the actual syntax in C Sharp is not that difficult. We're going to do for, surprise. Now we're going to have 3 things inside these parentheses. The first is a placeholder variable. Typically people do I, but you don't have to do I. You can, forge your own path and do your own thing. But we're going to declare a variable. Int I equals 0. Now what's the purpose of this? We'll see in a moment what I is doing, but I is like a placeholder. So as we loop through things, we need to have some way to know like which loop are we on. Are we on the first iteration? Are we on the 5th iteration? Are we on the 10th? Like how many times have we done this for loop? This variable I will keep track of like how many times have we done the for loop so far. The second thing we're going to put inside the parentheses is what condition do we want the loop to continue? So let's say, for example, I is less than 5. That means this loop will continue and go over and over and over again until I reaches 5. So if I is 0, then the loop will continue. If I is 4, the loop will continue. If the I is 6, the loop will not continue. So this lets the computer know, hey, this is when I want you to stop the loop. All right, at the end of the loop, what do you want the computer to do with this variable I? I would like to take I and move it up by 1. I'm going to put some curly braces, and then we have a basic for loop. All right, let's go over these 3 parts again. The first is a placeholder variable. Int I equals 0. It's usually an integer. You can have this be j, you can have it be k, you can have it be aardvark, it doesn't matter. Typically people just use I because it's one letter and easy to type. Then, what circumstance does the loop continue? Okay, this is called the condition. All right, essentially, as long as I is less than 5, we'll do whatever is in between these 2 curly braces. So the for loop has these 2 curly braces, and then you can put some code inside of here. And what this means is I will do that code so long as this remains true. And then when it reaches the end, I plus plus. So I'm inside the curly braces, so in between line 3 and 5, I'm going to do console.writeLine I. And that will write the value of I to the console. Now you could have as many lines of code in between these curly braces as you so feel like. Like it is up to you. I'm putting 1 line just because I want to show a simple example, but you can do between these 2 curly braces you can do as much code as you feel like. All right, let's run this and let's see what happens. It's compiling. All right, so if we look on the screen, it shows 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to hold up the output and compare it to the code. All right, so here's what happened. The loop starts. The computer gets to line 2 and says, okay, cool, we have a for loop. I'll make a variable called I, and it will start off at 0. Then, is 0 less than 5? Yes, 0 is less than 5. Cool, that means then the computer will say, cool, this part's true. It will then go to line 4 and do whatever is on line 4. Whatever is in between these curly braces, it will do. If it's 10 lines, it will do all 10 lines. If it's 1 line, it will do 1 line. Whatever you have in there, the computer will do. So I said console.writeLine I. That was this, 0. Cool. The computer got to line 5. The computer's like, okay, cool. Take I and increase it by 1. That's what this I++ is doing. Take I and increase it by 1. Well, we're still in the for loop, so we go all the way back up to line 2. So the computer went from line 2, then did line 4, got to line 5, it said, okay, I'm still in the for loop, and then went back up to line 2. So basically, we're going to have the computer go back and forth between line 2 and 5 over and over and over again. It'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, then back up to 2. Then 2, 3, 4, 5, then back up to 2. Over and over and over again until this is no longer true. All right, so if you look at the output, first I was 0, then I was 1, then I was 2, 3, 4. All right, so let's do 4, right? So I was 4. Console.writeLine, then did I was 4, it got to line 5. It increased I by 1. It went from 4 to 5. Then it said, okay, cool, we're going to go back up to line 2 and start the for loop. Oh, wait a second. I is 5, right? 5 is not less than 5. If I take this I and replace it with 5, right? This is not true. Okay, this is not true at all. Like 5 is not less than 5, 5 is equal to 5. So because that's no longer true, it doesn't continue the for loop. So you break out of the for loop, and then it will continue on. So I'm going to put some code here, kind of demonstrate that point. We've exited the for loop. All right, then I'm going to run it again. All right, see how all these numbers appeared on the console first, then we had line 7? That's because the computer has been doing lines 2 through 5 over and over and over and over again, and it couldn't move on until after the loop was broken. So once I was equal to 5, the loop was broken, then it could get to line 7. So for loops are a great way for us to be able to do code over and over and over again. So that line 4 got run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Okay, I wrote one line of code, but the computer ran it 5 times. That's really efficient. I don't have to write like console.write. Like this is way better than having to write console.write line 0, console.write line 1, and then have to do that for like all 5 of them. That'd be very, very, very like tedious to do. All right, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it just loop through 5 times and then just do this code. This is what we want to do in code. We don't want to like write out in a tedious manner that's going to like hurt our brains. We would rather have the computer give us convenient ways of doing something. So a for loop is a very convenient way of telling the computer to do code a certain number of times. All right, so again, to review the different parts, we have the for command, so we have for parentheses, and then we declare a placeholder variable, and we just chose I because we chose I out of a hat. We could call this hat. Like literally, if you went through and changed I to the word hat and ran it, it will look exactly the same. The variable has no magic powers. It's just a label. We can label it whatever we so feel like. So we just pick I because that is tradition. That's all. All right, so we have a placeholder variable. I called it I. Then I said this loop will run so long as I is less than 5. Okay, I want this loop to continue so long as I is less than 5. When we get to the end of the loop, I want you to take I and bump it up by 1. All right, so we had for int I equals 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Now, the for loop has this inside of it, which is these curly braces, and it will do whatever code you write here. So you can do console.write line, and then again, you can have more than one line. Console.write line, hey, what's up? I'm in a for loop. Okay, you have a million lines in between these two things. Up to you. If I run it, see how it gets. So the first loop, it printed out these two. Then the second time around, it printed out these two. Then the third time around, it printed out these two. So now I can have the computer do something multiple times. It'll do it over and over and over again until I tell it to, forever many times I told it to do something. All right, so that's how for loops work. Okay, and again, this is the syntax. My personal advice would be if you're having problems understanding for loops, the first thing you got to do is get this syntax down and not be thinking about it. It's always going to be in this basic order. It's going to be the placeholder, the condition, and then I++. You also can do I minus minus if you'd like. All right, but get this, type this out a few times and practice it. All right, and that's basically for loops. We'll talk about while loops next.